I had a really great time focusing on training a little bit differently than I have been over the course of the last few years. And that was really important to me because I have been working out for so long that I totally have days where I go into the gym and I'm like, this is kind of monotonous, because doing the same things consistently again and again and getting really good at certain exercises, challenging myself on certain lifts, requires me to keep repeating those lifts. But sometimes I want to change it up too. And finding ways to just like throw in a little bit of spice, let's call it, by switching up the goal and training for performance for this specific event, reignited a lot of that for me.
Let's link up with Krysta on the FYX. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
Hello, FYX listeners. Welcome back to our latest episode of the FYX podcast. I'm your host, Krysta Huber. We are moving right through the month of June. This year has literally felt like I just blinked and it's gone by. Every month seems to be going faster and faster. And now that we're halfway through the year, we like to, inside of the Fitness FYX program, kind of reset with our clients around what goals they came in to the program with, which could have been as 6 months ago, could have been a year ago, could have even been 3 months ago. And last week on one of our group coaching calls, we decided to go over what our 3, 6, and 12-month timelines look like as a group. And I love doing this exercise with our clients so much so that we've decided to make it a pillar of our program and something we revisit every couple of months, both individually with each of them, just to kind of say, hey, here's where you were a few months ago. Here's what we thought about you wanting to focus on. How are you doing in terms of your progress with your actions on a daily basis? Do you still maintain the expectation that you will achieve this goal in this time, or do we potentially need to adjust things? And the reason why I think this is so important is because most of the time when we don't get to where we want to go, it's because there's disconnects between what we say we want, the goal that we're writing down that we'd like to achieve within 3, 6, again, whatever timeline, versus what we're actually doing on a daily basis. And listen, as somebody who has had so many coaches, continues to have multiple coaches in her corner at any given time, I know what it feels like to make a commitment to being a part of a program and then not necessarily doing the work regularly. It is a part of the human experience. We come up with reasons why we can't achieve something, why it's not the right time to do something, why we feel like we're stuck, whatever it is. And I kind of hinted at this a little bit last week when I was talking about my experience with the High Rocks race and pushing myself to do something difficult. And I actually didn't include this in the podcast episode because I had these thoughts a few days after the race. And I really focused on this theme. If you didn't listen to the episode, here's the too long didn't read version, or didn't listen to, I guess in this case. We can do hard things, and it's great to push yourself, to remind yourself of doing hard things. But what I've since come to recognize is the fact that we actually choose more discomfort by staying in the same place. And we can be afraid of committing ourselves to making a change. So we actually continue to be even more uncomfortable by staying in the same exact place. And before I get into the rest of today's episode, that is just something that I wanted to touch on because I felt like it was a really important point that, not that I missed it, but it came to me later on. And I wrote a whole Instagram post about it. We put it on the Fitness FYX newsletter for this week. So if you are not following us on social media or subscribe to the newsletter, shameless plug for both, send me a DM at the Krysta Huber with your email and I will put you on it, because we send out some little FYX tips every single Friday. Most of them are actual things that you can integrate into your weekend, into your next week, some food for thought, things to just get you thinking about your perspective, changing your perspective on how you can really take the next 3, 6, or 12 months and do something different. So with that said, I want to expand on this idea of doing something different even further, because I'm on a quest for the summer with the support of one of my coaches who I've talked about on here before, Oliver. Shout out to him. He's the best. About trying new experiences, finding new hobbies, participating in different activities, going to different events. And the whole reason why him and I got on this topic is because as a business owner and as a single person, I find myself often believing this story that because I do have a lot of free time, I'm also not a parent. The things that I should be doing with any free time that I have should be laser focused on pursuing my business at all times. And part of the reason for that thought process is because one, I love what I do. And two, I really feel that it's a lot easier just logistically to integrate my work into the rest of my life. I can do it right from my laptop. I love recording these podcast episodes, but all of it's technically work, right? And it's tied with the fact that I put a lot of value in my ability to grow my business. The same principle that so many of us put into the number that we see on the scale. In this case, it's more of a financial number. It's more of an impact number of how many people are we supporting at any given time. But it still comes down to a number that I am tying my self-worth to with the same thought process that myself included. I say we, not just the proverbial we, I mean me, tied to the scale, tied to the dress size, tied to whatever we see in the mirror. And it got me thinking about this idea of discomfort, staying in the same place, choosing things that aren't serving us, all things that I have looked at in my life over the last few years, especially in all different areas, relationships, professionally, with my own health and fitness journey. And it all comes back to this question of, are we pursuing something because we think it's going to make us happier? And the statement of, I will be happy when I accomplish, in this case, let's say, losing 20 pounds. Which, by the way, if you are new around here, you haven't listened to my last few episodes over the course of like the last 3 months or so, I have lost about 20 pounds and I'm really excited about it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to say I'm any happier by like some very measurable degree than 20 pounds ago or even 40 pounds before that. I do feel better about myself, but I also have the other side of it that's like, well, this still doesn't feel like enough. So then it's like, at what point is it going to feel like enough? And that's a big question here. And that's something that I've really dove into, had the uncomfortable conversations, continue to have the uncomfortable conversations. I journal about it. I think about it throughout the day. I make space in my schedule to sit and think about these thoughts and ways to reframe them. And one of the ways I'm starting to reframe these things is asking myself the question of, okay, and this Oliver framed this up for me this way. If you built a business that impacted so many people, like a number you can't even fathom, like, and it happened tomorrow, really, like just overnight, all of a sudden you had like hundreds of new clients at once. And you looked around and you looked at the rest of your life. And you're already saying right now that you don't know if you feel super excited by everything else that's going on in your life. What makes you think that that feeling is going to go away? Will you truly just be happy when you have the bigger impact? Will you truly just be happy when you've lost X amount of weight? And this has come up even in conversations with friends. I had a close friend say to me the other day, and she's lost a significant amount of weight over the course of the last year. And she told me, she was like, I really always thought for years, like half my life, that once I lost a certain amount of weight, it would solve a lot of my quote unquote problems or feelings that I've been dealing with since I was a kid. And we were on the phone talking about this, and she was like, and none of those other things have gone away at all. If anything, and this part really stuck with me, losing the weight and noticing that the feelings that I have about myself, the feelings I have about my relationship to the world are still there, losing the weight has actually amplified those problems in my mind. It's actually intensified the fact that I feel this gap about myself because even losing the weight hasn't fulfilled it for me. And that really hit me because this is somebody that's a few years older than me. And I appreciated her vulnerability and I appreciated her sharing that with me and feeling comfortable as her friend to share that with me. But I also thought to myself, this is so honest. And I don't think enough people talk about this in the context of a few different areas of our lives, like thinking that once you find a different job, you will just be happier. Once you find another relationship, then you will be happy. As someone who has changed roles consistently, the first 3 years that I was out of college, I had a different job every year. And I can tell you there were points where I would say to myself, I'll be happier if I have this position and I'm under these circumstances. And it's not to say that I was like entirely wrong. Like objectively, there were things about the fact that I didn't see myself sitting behind a desk every day. I loved having a lot of social interaction. That I knew that if I changed the environment in which I was working, or maybe the employer that I was working for, that would inherently change. And did it make me happy? Yes. But what I think that most people get wrong is that this idea that XYZ choice will make me happier. Emphasis on the more happy piece, to put it not so eloquently. And what it comes back to is deciding that you want to be happy right now. Deciding that you like your life right now. And if you don't actually like it, recognizing that you do have the power to change it. And you don't have to go changing 17 things at once. But we do have a responsibility to start to recognize that as we integrate these changes, it's so important to celebrate the wins along the way. Because if we keep pushing off this idea that we'll feel better once we achieve this certain goal, we are missing out on the whole experience of what it's like to actually get to said goal, the challenge that's a part of that goal. Let's go back to the example of the race last week. I had a really great time focusing on training a little bit differently than I have been over the course of the last few years. And that was really important to me because I have been working out for so long that I totally have days where I go into the gym and I'm like, this is kind of monotonous because doing the same things consistently again and again and getting really good at certain exercises, challenging myself on certain lifts requires me to keep repeating those lifts. But sometimes I want to change it up too. And finding ways to just like throw in a little bit of spice, let's call it, by switching up the goal and training for performance for this specific event reignited a lot of that for me. But I didn't say to myself like, oh, I'll be happier once I actually complete this race. During the race itself, I was like, this is hard as hell. I'll be happy once this is over. But I also did actually really enjoy encouraging myself to focus on a little bit more cardio, getting out and doing runs. I couldn't tell you, it had been probably like 4 years since I went out on the boardwalk and actually ran. And it was really nice timing in the few weeks leading up to the race. The weather's gotten nicer here at the beach. Like, who doesn't want to go up there and spend some time outside? And I wouldn't have, not that I 100% wouldn't have done that, but I wouldn't have been as consistent with doing it. And that's something I can look back on now and be like, yeah, I'm really happy I did that. Not because of this culmination of this one event, but because of all of the inputs and all of the choices I made leading up to it too. So now, as I think about this, moving through the summer and thinking about what I want my day-to-day to look like, again, not having a partner, not having children, I have total flexibility, and also being my own boss, I have total flexibility to design my day exactly how I want it. And when I think about that a few years ago, I would have never thought this was possible for me, especially as fast as it's happened. And I find that funny too, because if you'd asked me this question 2 years ago, I would have told you like, I can't wait to get to this point because I really wanted it for myself and I wanted it to happen. And I was willing to do whatever I could to make it happen. And now that I'm a full year removed from having any other sort of employer, because the Fitness Fix was for a very long time a quote unquote side hustle for me. And I had other part-time, full-time positions, still teaching group fitness classes, coaching in some capacity. I'm at a point of reflection in the last 12 months of saying, over the last year, this is the first time I've had complete flexibility to design my schedule and just literally do what I want to do. And it's been really great. But I've also asked myself if I am fully tapping into that flexibility and that freedom. And the answer is no, because I've convinced myself, well, if I do this, or I can't do this unless I do that. And to give you specific examples, something that I've thought a lot about is this idea that I shouldn't really be having fun or doing fun activities unless I work a certain number of hours in the day or achieve a certain goal, whether it's a financial one, certain number of clients, whatever it is. Again, same principles as what people think about when they're like, oh, like I won't be happy until I lose those 20 pounds. And my new effort and my new perspective on this is just go do the things that you think you shouldn't do until you've reached a certain point. So for me, that's starting to look like finding some new activities. And I think this is really important. If any of you out there are listening, especially if you're another coach, or if you're somebody who has just been in a fitness routine for a really long time, even if you still have other fitness goals, I'm not telling you to like back burner or table any of those things, but something I'm guilty of missing inside of our own pursuits of health and wellness is, well, what are you doing all of this for? Like, why are you prioritizing getting a good night's sleep, having high quality energy, putting really good quality foods inside of your body, going to the gym, pushing yourself in uncomfortable ways to lift heavier, being consistent, and yes, making some sacrifices too. This isn't a podcast on go do whatever you want and you'll still get what you desire. It doesn't work like that. If you know that you have a specific goal when it comes to fat loss in particular, are there certain choices you are going to need to make? Yes, of course. But we go through periods where we may be a little more dialed in and then a little less dialed in. And that's how we ultimately find that balance. But when we think, oh, I need to go to the gym, meal prep, make sure I'm choosing the best food options, make sure I'm getting a good night's sleep, reduce my screen time, get outside in the morning and get sunlight so I can reset my circadian rhythm, choose to limit my alcohol. The list goes on and on and on, right? The fundamental reason why we're doing these things, especially with what I see with the women inside of the Fitness Fix, is because we are doing a lot of things in our lives. The tagline that I've adopted this year is for the women who are doing it all, showing you how to do it better. And what I've come to think about is the fact that doing it better includes doing things for the sheer enjoyment of trying something new and enjoying exactly where you are right now. And sometimes I think that when we do actually really like exercise, because that's often something that so many people inside of our program come to us and say, hey, this isn't really about me like not liking working out. I love moving my body. I just don't know that I'm necessarily doing the right thing for the results that I desire. And I need some clarity on that. The other massive piece that gets missed is like, what about doing something that you know you're able to do because you take care of your body? So in my case, I decided I'm going to go play golf. And I picked this for a few different reasons. One is because I felt like it was a good hobby that obviously helps you still stay active and get your steps in. It also reminds you that there are different ways to include fitness in your life that doesn't actually just have to include like being inside of a gym, right? And I think I do a pretty good job of that because I like to be outside. I like doing things to move my body that aren't necessarily just lifting weights. But at the same time, I even think about the fact that I live only a couple blocks from the beach. And most of last summer, I went maybe twice a week. why not go every day? Why not? Even if it's just to sit there or stand on the boardwalk for 10 minutes, it doesn't even have to be a long time, but it's like you live in this beautiful place. You've chosen to live here. Why not experience it for all that it is? Because if you're saying to yourself, I have a desire to be happy, that includes, or I shouldn't even say that includes, if you are saying to yourself you have a desire to be happy, it's your responsibility to create that happiness. And you holding on to this rule that I'll be happy once this thing arrives, once I accomplish this other thing. What are you doing in the meantime? Just choosing to be unhappy? Just choosing to be miserable? And we go through life thinking that like we don't have the power of choice. And we do have the power of choice. And it can be really small choices. And that's something that I've come to learn through having the support of other coaches, because like I said, it's like little things. It's just like adding in these experiences of going to the beach for 10 minutes. Yesterday, it was a beautiful day, and I have a bike that during the winter collects a lot of dust when it's a little cold outside. But I'm like, you know what? Let me go hop on my bike before the sun sets and just go on a little bike ride. There was no humidity. Put on my headphones, listen to some of my favorite music, and just soak up the fact that I have created this life where I get to live this close to the beach, that I get to walk right up to the scenery, be there within only a few minutes. And yet I can think through so many other times where I've said to myself, oh, I shouldn't go take this bike ride because I really need to plan this content for the week. Full well knowing that if I got home 20 minutes later, I could 100% plan that content and everything would work out totally fine. Or thinking to myself, do I really want to go do this activity alone? Because this would be more fun if I had a partner to share it with. That's a perspective, that's a choice. And that doesn't have to be inherently true. That's a story that you could potentially be writing for yourself where you are limiting your own happiness and your own experiences. And the way that I really put this into a lot of context for myself is reminding myself that if we take this exact moment that you are listening to this podcast right now, remembering that you will never be as young as you are right now at this very second today. You may never be in this exact instant. You won't be in this exact instant that you are in right now today. So what can you do to fully embrace it? And in addition to that, yes, I keep bringing up examples of like activities and hobbies and physical things to go do with your body or experiences to have. It could also just be the choice of being super present on your work and whatever you're doing. Like I write an email every single week for a newsletter, and I choose to make that a fun experience because I love to write. And I've talked about this before on the podcast. I've talked about this before with our clients. When you feel like you're in a rut with something with your fitness routine, or the one I hear constantly is when you feel like you're in a rut with your meal prep, for example. And clients will come to me or people will message me on Instagram and they'll say something to the effect of, I feel like I just need a few new recipe ideas. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's usually coming from the person who's really busy and they make tons of decisions throughout the day. So if we can flip their perspective to say, hey, what might it look like if the quote unquote new recipe is simply you just like changing a few different seasonings or sides that you're potentially using with whatever main protein it is that you're cooking. And boom, it feels like something different, but it didn't actually take a lot of other effort on your part. Great solution. And one that I really lean on myself too. But what if it's just about romanticizing the experience of you doing that meal prep and saying to yourself, I'm going to walk into my kitchen, and instead of thinking, I need to be done with this meal prep within an hour because I also need to go do my laundry, take this person here, finish off this email, get set up with this project, insert every other thing on your to-do list to follow that. 2, I'm looking forward to preparing a bunch of food for myself this week, which will make my life easier when I have to handle all of the things that I just listed in my head that need to get done. And I'm actually going to just enjoy the process of doing this for the next 30 minutes and be really mindful of exactly what's happening right in front of me? Or how can I make this more fun? Can I put on some music while I'm doing that meal prep? If you do have other people in your household and you want them to participate in it with you, how can you bring them into that experience? Can you watch some Netflix at the same time that you're cooking? Can you try that new recipe because maybe that's your version of making it fun and exciting for you? Why not? Those small tweaks are all representative of you making an effort to say, I will be happy right now. Even though I'm working towards some other goal, I'm choosing to enjoy the exact moment that I'm in and learning how to actually like the process. I know it's such a cliche to say, oh, you need to just trust the process, or you'll have more success when you fall in love with the process. It's like, yeah, it is kind of a cliche, but I think part of the reason why it's kind of a cliche is because no one actually is telling you when they make that comment of like, oh, trust the process, or like learn to enjoy the process. It needs to be followed up with, well, how can we actually enjoy that process? And hopefully that's what you've taken these last 30-ish minutes as examples of how you can start to enjoy the process. And the ways that I'm doing that is saying, hey, why don't I try other activities that I've never tried before, or even go back to things that I've done before? Over the last 2 weeks or so, I've started to sign myself up for more group fitness classes, and I am no stranger to that environment. But after about a year, a little less, of not actually teaching classes, I've been out of that world. I miss the community piece of it. And I also want to remember what it's like to simply be a participant rather than being a coach, because that really was what inspired me to want to be a fitness professional in the first place. It was showing up to classes and being a part of the crowd and just being that class goer like everybody else. And it's been nice to reconnect with that and also use it as a way to connect with our clients in person, which is awesome. And just thinking about like, what are different things that I can do day to day to be like, hey, I'm really looking forward to this. And again, it doesn't have to be some like formal activity that you're signing yourself up for. It can be those little moments. Think about the things that you do every single day. My challenge to you this week, going into this weekend, if you're listening to this podcast when it drops live on Thursday, think about things that are always a part of your weekend routine and ask yourself how you can make them something you look forward to. It doesn't have to be all of them, because look, like, I don't really have a suggestion for how you can romanticize doing the laundry, right? And not everything needs to be happy and fun and light all the time. There's certain stuff that we just got to get it done. But are there things that are taking away from you using your time in a way that's going to help you pour back into you, that's going to help you feel good right in this moment? And it could be something to go back to your fitness and nutrition journey and the goals that you have. This was a thought I had last week. I put up a post talking about how I didn't feel super ready Memorial Day weekend to be in a bathing suit. And I had a conversation with my nutrition coach about it just a few days ago. We are still on the pursuit to focus on making me feel more and more confident. But I went to the beach just the other day, and at first I was like, oh, let me put on a one piece because I'll just feel a little bit better like that. And I was like, you know what? I haven't tried on these bikinis in like a year. It's been a minute since I'm just getting back into going to the beach now that the summer is just beginning. Let me just put one on. And I put one on and I felt really good in it. I could have stood there in my room and been like, no, I shouldn't wear this. Like, I already know that I'll feel better in the one piece. And I was like, I also need to work on my tan a little bit. So let's put on the bikini. And I felt great in it. Do I want to feel better? 100%. Yes. And I know I'm making choices every day to make that my reality. But it wasn't a reason to stop myself and say, no, you are not allowed to wear this certain outfit until you've reached a certain weight. Because I've been at those other leaner points. And yes, I felt so great and confident and excited putting on those bathing suits at that time. But I also feel like I didn't even appreciate it. Because if I really did, then I would have held stronger on certain habits, consistencies, behaviors over the last few years to make sure I didn't wind up in the state that I started this year off of, or even last year. So it's like you find this new, you have a newfound appreciation when something changes for you and you're like, oh, if I didn't enjoy that then, what's stopping me from enjoying doing this now or making this choice now? And most of the time, the only thing that's stopping you is you. So if you catch yourself limiting something, if you catch yourself having a rule of like, I shouldn't go do X until I do Y, or I can't have this thing until I do this thing, flip it around and say, actually, I'm going to start with the thing that I want. And I'm going to start embodying that and being that person today. And watch how happy you do get to be inside of the process. And then it gets to the point where it's not even a process. It's just how you live your life. It's who you are. It's how you operate. It's literally ingrained into your identity. So much so, I was scrolling Instagram the other day and I saw a post, and I forget who it was, but I saw a post that basically claimed that like habits are kind of bullshit because habits are really hard to stick to unless you peel back the onion a little bit further and look at the belief system that you have in place, your identity and your mindset and how you see yourself in the world, your relation to the rest of the world actually informs your habits. So the thought process was, if we can get to the root cause and think about how you see yourself, well, then the habits will fall into place a whole lot easier. And I couldn't agree with that more. As someone who does preach a ton about the importance of developing habits, because we do require consistency in our routines to get results, I'm all on board with this idea of shifting your mindset and really getting to the root cause of who you are so that those habits feel more natural, so that those habits just feel like the way that you operate. And that's something we break down inside of the Fitness Fix. It's why I pride myself on working with other coaches who can help me find that within me, because that then directly translates to the experience that we create inside of our program, the conversations we have with our clients. And I've said this multiple times on the show, especially this year, because it's become so inherently obvious to me. But the best conversations we have with clients that I know I can guarantee them results are people who are willing to peel back those layers a little bit more, and people who are willing to have the harder conversations and communicate them about them and be a little uncomfortable in having them too. So again, your homework for this week, your challenge going into this weekend, is to find the time to do something you know you want to do, but you've convinced yourself it shouldn't happen until you accomplish something else, or to look at the consistent activities that are a part of your routine and think about how you can just make them a little more fun. And if you have any suggestions for me on activities and different things that I should try, send them my way. I've gotten dance, I've gotten water activities, something like surfing, swimming. I don't know that I'll surf. I'll just put that out there. I've been told pickleball so many times that I'm like, I know everyone's playing it at this point. Excited about golf. I'm excited to be a total beginner at something. Took my first lesson, and all we focused on was like the minor details of learning how to properly grip the club, and it makes a huge difference. It was cool. And looking forward to just getting my reps in there and treating it like what it was like when I was brand new to lifting and getting to have that same newbie experience again. That's all I got for you guys. Excited to hear the feedback on this one. I've got some fun guests lined up for the next few weeks, so stay tuned. And from wherever you're listening from, as always, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll catch you guys next week.